Hello, everybody. You are listening to episode number 2 of the Frank Amato Show. I'm your host, Frank, and I'm looking forward to this episode. I recorded my first episode for the show yesterday, so feel free to check that out if you haven't already. I thought that was a good baseline or first episode to do for the show. A lot of profound things that I'm doing in 2026 to just overall improve my life in certain areas. Episode 2 is building off of that in a way. And we're going to be talking about prioritizing a good night's sleep. And just to preface with where I'm going to be getting most of my information to share with you guys, I've been reading this book. It's the Harvard Medical School Guide to a Good Night's Sleep here. Feel free to check it out. Shout out to the author, Lawrence J. Epstein. He's an MD. I believe, I don't know if he's still there or not now at Harvard because this book was published in 2006, but he was at the Harvard Medical School Division of Sleep Medicine. And he wrote this book, I believe, with a man named Stephen Martin, I believe is the other gentleman who wrote this book with Lawrence Epstein. And so I just wanted to shout out that book that I have here before we get started to preface with where I'm getting most of my information. Now, I want to set the stage for this episode. And first of all, if you're listening to this episode and you already think you're getting a good night's sleep, listen, a lot of people will tell you that they can function off 5, 6 hours of sleep. A very small percentage of the population can do that. And it's just not the case. And even if you think that you can perform off of a very low amount of sleep, it's just not the case. And again, a lot of people will say that they can, but your efficacy and your performance throughout the day is indefinitely affected for most people, even people that say that they don't need that 7.5 to 8 hours that most people need. So I just wanted to start off by saying that I think this is a valuable episode for a lot of people, including myself. I really enjoyed reading this book and gaining some different insights about how important it is to sleep. I think it's an undervalued and one of the most underestimated things that people don't I don't want to say appreciate, but they really don't uh what's the word I'm looking for? They don't proactively think about their sleep. And it is something that's really important to do. Make sure you're getting adequate amounts of sleep. But how are we hitting those stages of sleep, like deep sleep and REM sleep, at higher levels to improve our well being and performance and functionality throughout the daytime? So, I want to give some broad statistics to kind of set the stage. Uh, these are all stats that I got from chapter 1 of the book that believe are prevalent, honestly, to a large amount of people. And most likely, maybe not for everybody, but most likely, even one of these stats plays a role in your life directly, whichever of these stats it may be. Maybe not, though. So, a 2005 study found that 75% of adults in the previous year had one or more symptoms of a sleep problem, and 54% of them experienced one or more symptoms of insomnia. So, that's three-fourths of people in this 2005 NSF, that's the National Sleep Foundation. So, their study, 3 in 4 adults admitted to a symptom of a sleep problem and 54% of them, so over half of them, admitted to a symptom of insomnia. So I thought that was really interesting. Americans on average, and again, just to say it one last time, this book is from 2006, so it was published nearly 20 years ago. So just keep that in mind. Um, so these numbers could be different now, but Americans on average get around 6.9 hours of sleep per night, while experts have found that we actually need around 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep per night. So you're hovering anywhere from that. You're missing about a half an hour to over a full hour of sleep every night if you're the average American, which means that performance is going to take a hit for this average American as they're accumulating a sleep debt that we're going to talk about later in the episode. There's also a direct correlation between lack of sleep and poor health per this study. And at the time, there was research being done when they published this book in 2006 that a lack of sleep or sleep deprivation may be a risk factor associated with health problems like diabetes, heart disease, and even obesity. So these medical issues actually were associated potentially with sleep deprivation and a lack of good night's sleep. So I thought that was a really interesting study. And obviously, 20 years later, I imagine there's a lot more research done to support those claims. Sleep deprivation slash disorders. This is the most interesting number to me. Cost Americans an estimated $100 billion annually in lost productivity, medical costs, sick leave, as well as damage to property and the environment. So, the economic impacts of lack of sleep in America are also profound. And again, being that this book was made in 2006 or published in 2006, that $100 billion number, who knows what it is now in modern day 2026 America. So, I thought all those numbers were really interesting. I thought it was good to set the stage with some of those facts and figures to just relay to you guys how important and how crucial I believe it is, and most people believe it is, to get a good night's sleep. And I'm sure you out there agree with the fact that sleep is extremely important. It's just a matter of, are you taking it seriously enough or not? And so that's why I think this episode is a great one for you to listen in on, because I'm going to be going over two things here for the rest of the episode. It's really not going to be a long one. That I'm doing back to back episodes, back to back days. I don't plan on doing that all the time, but I really wanted to get this one out as soon as possible. So I want to give you guys some background on what the two main mechanisms are that actually control sleep. If you were to look this up, these would be the two main mechanisms that come up. They talk about it in this book in depth, and I really appreciated reading on what these two mechanisms are. So, one is called the homeostatic sleep drive, and the other one is the circadian sleep wake rhythm. So, homeostasis is your body, it's your body's built-in tendency to get back to that internal stable equal, they call it equilibrium, that your body wants to reach. So let's say it controls various things, factors in your body, like temperature, blood pressure, etc. So when it comes to sleep, you have a homeostatic sleep drive. Now there's two factors that affect your homeostatic sleep drive. One is how long it's been in between rest. So let's say you woke up at 7 a.m. and it's now 7 p.m. It's been 12 hours, right? So the longer that number gets, the more tired you should be. That's your homeostatic sleep drive going to work. Obviously, common sense. That's pretty intuitive. The other factor affecting homeostatic sleep drive is sleep debt. And guys, that's a real thing. So what I mean by sleep debt is, let's say, for example, the average 23-year-old human like myself needs on average you really need about 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep per night. But let's just, for the sake of the example here, let's call it 8 hours. Let's say I fell asleep, or let's say I got 6 hours of sleep last night. Tonight I end up getting 6 hours of sleep, and tomorrow I get 6 hours of sleep. That means that I had a sleep debt of 2 hours, 3 days in a row. That is a 6 hour total cumulative sleep debt. So the more sleep debt that you take on, your homeostasis is going to be imbalanced. It's going to want you. You're going to want to sleep more, and your efficacy and your performance throughout the day is going to be affected by the sleep debt that piles on over time. So these two factors, length of time since you've last been asleep, as well as your sleep debt, these are the two factors that affect your homeostatic sleep drive. That is the first mechanism that controls your sleep. So again, homeostasis is your body's built-in tendency to go back to equilibrium, and that's through adjusting physiological processes in the body. So your body's physiological processes adjust to reach homeostasis. Now, the next mechanism that controls sleep is your circadian sleep wake rhythm. Uh, there's a side by side with your circadian sleep wake rhythm is called your internal biological clock. So this is actually what's controlling what makes you feel sleepy at night and what makes you feel ready to go in the morning, or at least the cues that wake you up in the morning. Now, the circadian sleep wake rhythm is also interesting. It has what's called a bimodal pattern, which means there's going to be two peaks throughout the day when you feel most tired. One is going to be from around 12 a.m. midnight to 6 a.m. dawn, and the other one's early, or I'm sorry, mid afternoon, which is around 2 o'clock p.m., 3 o'clock p.m., whatever it might be. So that is just the circadian rhythm, your sleep wake rhythm going to work. They actually found where your internal clock is in the brain. It's called the SCN, which is, I believe it is the suprachiasmatic nucleus. I'm going to search it up just to be 100% sure. That's off the dome. Um, suprachiasmatic, of course, the internet's giving me a hard time here. I believe it's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the SCA. I'm going to look it up right now just to make sure 100% that that's what it's called, because, of course, my book doesn't want to find it for me right now, or not my book, my computer. Yeah, suprachiasmatic nucleus. It's a cluster of cells located in the hypothalamus of your brain. I believe they found out that this is where your internal clock is located because they did like a study on rats and they found this out. Now, I thought that was interesting just to share with you guys, even though it's not pragmatic or useful maybe for your day to day life. Thought that was interesting. Now, another thing I found out from this book is you have your internal clock, and it actually also works hand in hand with several external cues that can trigger your internal clock. They're called Zeitgebers, Zeitgebers. It's a German word. It actually means time givers, and there's three ones they list in the book. So these Zeitgebers are light, time cues, and melatonin. So light is your first Zeitgeber. It's an external cue that actually triggers this internal clock that you have that works hand in hand with the circadian rhythm. So as you have light exposure, I believe that your melatonin levels drop when you're exposed to light, and I believe that's one of the phenomena that goes on that causes you to wake up in the morning when there's light. Then there's time cues. If you know read clocks, if you have a certain transportation schedule going to and from work, like these are all time cues that actually play a role into your conscious. And one of the Zeitgebers that also acts as an external cue to work hand in hand with this internal clock that you have. And then the last one is melatonin. When it gets dark and you're not exposed to light, that's when your melatonin levels rise in your brain. And that's also one of the Zeitgebers that plays a role in you feeling sleepy at night. So, excuse me, those are the two main mechanisms that play a role in your sleep control. So, homeostatic sleep drive and the circadian rhythm. Now, this is where it gets interesting to me, is that they actually work independently. And what I mean by that is, since they work independently, they can work together to help you get a great night's sleep or get help or make sure you get a horrible night's sleep, or they can work against each other. Maybe the homeostatic sleep drive is positively benefiting your sleep while the circadian rhythm is negatively benefiting it, or vice versa, right? So an example of it working against each other is somebody maybe that works overnight shifts, meaning that they're working and they're awake during the nighttime when it's dark out, and they're trying to sleep during the day. Think about what I said before for as far as homeostatic sleep drive. Let's say this person got an excellent 8 hours of sleep last night, or should I say during the day, because they sleep during the day. So that's the 8 hours they got, and maybe they didn't accumulate any sleep debt during the week. Their homeostatic sleep drive is actually going to work to their favor when they go to work overnight because they've gotten a good night's sleep. Let's say they woke up 4 hours ago, right? Remember, the other factor I said is time, since you were last asleep. So if they just woke up 4 hours ago and they don't have this sleep debt, that means your homeostatic sleep drive is going to promote uh, functionality when you go to work over the night. Now, on the other hand, you think about their circadian sleep wake rhythm and how that works. One of these Zeitgebers that we talked about, one of the external cues for this internal clock that you have, is light. And so if you're trying to sleep during the daytime, that's tough to do because light is one of those external cues that tells your body it's time to be awake. So you think about somebody working overnight shifts, even if their homeostatic sleep drive is working to their favor, promoting good sleep, but the circadian rhythm is saying, hey, It's bright outside, the sun is shining, it's warm, it's nice. That also plays a role, and that's kind of an example of homeostatic sleep drive and the circadian rhythm working together, and that's oftentimes, I believe, why people who work overnight shifts deal with poor sleep and lack of good sleep. So I thought that was really, really interesting. Now that you guys understand the two mechanisms that play a role in, a good night's sleep and what actually controls sleep, I think that's a good segue into what is the six-step plan that the book shares with us for a better night's sleep. I'm going to start following this, like a doctrine here, because I think this is really important to do. And these guys did a lot of good work, into researching what goes into a good night's sleep and improved quality of life. And so I'm going to share it with you guys. The first one is recognize the importance of sleep. They made a pretty funny metaphor in the book. They said the failure to recognize a good night's sleep is like the equivalent of drawing one of those do not pass go cards in Monopoly. I get what they were saying. So it's pretty much in the sense that, let's say you're in trying to improve your life and quality of life, right? You're starting to eat healthy, you're exercising, you're getting outside, you're getting sunlight. None of those things matter if you don't prioritize great sleep. So it's one and the same almost to go and do these other things, because none of these things are going to work if you're not taking action to get a good night's sleep. So you need to first of the six steps here is recognize the importance of a good night's sleep. The next thing is adopt a healthy lifestyle. So again, all of these factors that lead to improved health, they work in unison. So you can't just think about a good night's sleep. You have to think about the things that are going to promote a good night's sleep. So you see how they kind of work together? Like if I were to try and take care of my body and my health in other areas, it's not going to matter if I don't get a good night's sleep. But you also can't get a good night's sleep if you're not doing the other things that are going to help you get a good night's sleep. So they work together in that way. They're codependent. Um, Daily exercise. It's proven to have a direct positive impact on your increased amount of deep sleep, which is I believe the portion of your sleep that you're in about 50% of the time in your younger days, and it's the part of sleep responsible for tissue growth and muscle repair. And so that kind of makes sense intuitively, because if you're exercising a lot and you're breaking down your muscles when you're exercising, you want to be in that deep sleep longer, or should I say, your body wants to be in that deep sleep longer to repair tissue and muscles and help them grow. So that makes sense. But yes, it leads to an increased amount of deep sleep when you exercise daily, and then as well as sleep latency. Sleep latency is how quickly it takes you to fall asleep, or how quickly it takes you, or how long you're awake for before you fall asleep. And a well balanced diet plays a role, and of course, limiting your alcohol and smoking intake just to optimize your baseline sleep quality. So that is the second of six steps to improve your sleep, is adopt a healthy lifestyle. The third step is to maintain good sleep habits. One of those things being your sleep wake schedule. You want to wake up and you want to go to bed around the same time every single day. I know from a pragmatic sense that's hard to do, because life kind of gets in the way sometimes and causes you to stay up later if you're a college student. Sometimes you need to study late in the night for that exam the next day. And then sometimes you have a class at 7 a.m. and sometimes you have your first class is at noon. So all these different factors can play a role into anyone's life. But you want to be as consistent as you can possibly be when it comes to your sleep wake schedule. That is one of these good habits that you can maintain. Another one, or I'll give you pretty much what I do or what I've been trying to do after reading this book, is my philosophy, or pretty much my step by step as I'm trying to unwind for the night, is I will turn off all technology, anything that emits blue light 30 minutes before I go to bed. I will pick up a book. I'll try to read a chapter or two, however many pages I can get to. And then I will do my breath work that I talked about in my episode yesterday. I talked about reading and breath work, two things that you can do to improve your life in 2026. So I'll do those two things, and then I will brush my teeth and I will go to bed. So I think it's important to actually stay off your phone. Again, that blue light that's emitted. And another thing the book talked about that I actually am going to try and start doing if I find it causing me trouble falling asleep at night, is writing down any thoughts you have in your head, any personal problems, any things that you might need to get done that are stuck on your mind, write them down before bed because then you have that note, that's pretty much it's a psychological thing. You now that you have written it down, you know that you can look at that note tomorrow and achieve the things that are on the list or get those things done and take care of them. And so that brings you a sense of peace and tranquility at night. So you stop thinking about them and you get a better night's sleep. Also, I want to see if that actually works. So if I have something pop up in my head that I need to get done or talk to somebody about, I'll write it down. Hopefully, it doesn't happen, but if it does happen, I will try and see if that resolves my issue of thinking about said thing. So that is the third step is maintain good sleep habits. The fourth one is create the optimal sleep environment. So this includes things like controlling or reducing noise in any way possible. I know that me being in a house of 7 people, that can be a really hard thing to do. You can get like earplugs, shut your door obviously at night. There's a ton of things obviously I'm sure you can do to reduce noise that comes through your house and into your bedroom at night. So try to do that. You want to block out light. If you have blinds, that's obviously great. Turn off your lights, as many lights as you can in your room, even if you have a night light. I guess that's okay, but you want to try and block it as much light as you can. Cooling down your bedroom. I'm sure a lot of you guys know that your body temperature drops when you go to bed or when your body is, I believe it starts to drop temperature, maybe stage 1 or 2 sleep. So your body temperature drops when you're asleep. And then you want to make your bed as comfortable as possible. Again, most of these things, guys, are intuitive, but I think it's good to just reinforce these ideas because although they are intuitive, I bet a lot of you guys out there already have taken 1 or 2 different things that you can do to improve your sleep every day. So I believe that that is all for step 4. And step 5, watch out for sleep saboteurs, I believe the word is here. So pretty much Lawrence J. Epstein in the book, he talks about caffeine filled and alcoholic beverages. You don't want to consume these anywhere from 3 to 5 hours before you go to bed. Um, Alcoholic beverages are the one that are caffeine makes sense, right? You don't want that caffeine before bed that increases your alertness. It has to do with those adenosine receptors in your brain. But for alcohol, people certainly get that feeling of being sedated and maybe their sleep latency drops. They go to bed quicker, but your quality of sleep's actually worse because you hover in that. There's 4 stages of sleep: stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's REM sleep. Stage 3 and 4 are the stages of deep sleep. You get less deep sleep with alcohol intake, and you're more stuck in those first 2 stages of sleep when you drink alcohol. So even if you think it actually has a better effect for your sleep, it's not the case. It has a worse effect for your sleep. So you want to avoid alcohol before bed. Also, avoid eating 2 to 4 hours before bed. That is actually not from the book. That's something I've learned outside of the book externally. And of course, any foods that may cause heartburn, that is also from the book. So watch out for those sleep saboteurs and then seek help for consistent sleep problems. Obviously, we're at by stage or by step 6 here. Hopefully, we've done everything possible outside of seeing a doctor or a physician to take care of our sleep. But if we haven't done that yet, obviously go out, seek help from a doctor to figure out what is needed. Now, that's all I had for the 6 step plan. And that really covered all the content I wanted to cover. Now, I do also want to just say that this book has 2 parts, and all I did was read the first part. I don't plan on even reading the second part. The first part is understanding the need for sleep and really covered a ton of the things I talked about and more. And then part 2 is sleep disorders and their treatments. Now, the reason I'm not going to get into that is because many of you out there, I'm sure you don't deal with sleep disorders treatments. I believe that's a better area to actually go to your physician when it comes to sleep disorders and how to treat them and what medications to take, et cetera, et cetera. If you have something like sleep apnea or RLS, restless leg syndrome, or maybe you have insomnia, whatever it might be, you're sleep deprived, it's better to see a doctor for these things if these issues don't resolve themselves once you take action that I mentioned here today. But guys, that's really all I had for episode 2 of the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And I truly believe that, my first episode, I think it only has 6 to 8 viewers right now. If I can just impact somebody's life of those 6 to 8 people with episode 2 here today, that's all that really matters to me. I think over time, this is going to compound. I'm going to try to deliver the highest quality product as possible when it comes to this show here. As I did with my first podcast, again, this one's going to be touching on a lot more different subjects to help you, improve your day to day life. Again, I want to have so many different guests on the show, and I just get excited thinking about it and where I can really take this thing. Eventually, get industry professionals on here, people in academia, PhD level people, uh, really successful business owners out there, maybe other podcasters. Who knows? Maybe I'll have the biggest podcast in the world one day, and I can have uh, some of these top dogs in the podcast game on eventually. I'm even just gonna have friends and maybe eventually family or whoever on this podcast, people I'm close with that I think will have some value for you guys. But either way, this is going to be a journey that is long, one that I am ready to take second time around here. And again, I what I hope more than anything is with this show, I want it to be I have a lot of integrity when I try to provide people with value, and I try to give them as high quality of a product as possible. And so that is what I'm going to do with you guys here. I'm never going to put out any podcast that I feel isn't of value to you. Wouldn't even cross my mind to record any garbage. I want to give you guys quality. And so, with that being said, thank you guys for listening. Episode 2 of the Frank Amato Show, and we will see you guys on episode 3.